She reads you before you speak, and she's never shared a single photograph of herself online. Not shyness, not insecurity, something else entirely that you haven't discovered about yourself yet. That you haven't discovered about yourself yet. If you've encountered a woman like this, or if you are one, the next few minutes will reshape everything you understand about silence, influence, and the invisible architecture of the most aware people on this planet. Comment seen if you're ready to understand why the strongest women in your sphere are also the most absent from the digital noise. There's a woman in your life, perhaps a close friend, perhaps someone whose presence you feel without direct contact. Perhaps that woman is you, an ease, an uncanny ability to make you feel genuinely articulate in ways you can't quite articulate. But you've noticed something consistent about her. No selfies, no curated reels with her face centered. Her digital footprint doesn't exist in that way. And somewhere along the way, you probably wondered why. Maybe you assumed privacy. Maybe you thought confidence issues. Maybe you filed it away as someone who simply doesn't care about the game. Every single one of those assumptions misses what's actually happening. This isn't avoidance. This isn't insecurity pretending to be preference. What she's doing is one of the most psychologically intelligent choices available to anyone navigating a world saturated with performance and noise. And once you understand the internal logic behind it, you'll never interpret a woman's silence the same way again. Let's begin with what an empath actually is. Not the diluted version that gets distributed through wellness like a personality label. The real thing, a truly psychological landscape around her at a depth most people don't most people don't even know exists. She doesn't simply notice you're upset. She feels the precise quality of that upset. She doesn't just see discomfort. She reads the micro movements in your face, the rhythm of your breathing, the fractional pause before your smile lands. She absorbs all of this before you've said a word. This isn't something she developed. It's how her nervous system is wired. Current research on sensory processing sensitivity confirms this. Certain people are neurologically designed to process emotional and sensory information at significantly greater depth than average. They notice more, they feel more, they integrate more. And the consequence of moving through the world with that kind of nervous system is constant, overwhelming stimulus. Picture it. Every conversation a symphony of Badikata. Every room contains 10 layers beneath the surface words. Feel the unspoken tension between strangers across a coffee shop. You detect the gap between someone's smile and what they actually feel. You're receiving all of this continuously, whether you want to or not. What happens when you live inside that level of perception constantly? You learn to manage your input. You become deliberate about what you expose yourself to. You develop fierce boundaries around your environment. And that biological necessity to control what you let in and what you send out is foundational to why she doesn't broadcast herself online. Here's what the internet doesn't tell you, but empaths figured out years ago. When you post a photograph of yourself, you're not just sharing an image, you're creating an opening, an invitation for energy, judgment, projection, desire, comparisonal envy, and critique all simultaneously. You're essentially standing in an illuminated space with no walls, every entrance exposed, and announcing, "Come here." The validation hit. The dopamine from likes. Sense of social confirmation. They post and they monitor and they feel something. The trade-off works. But for AIM, opening channel doesn't feel rewarding. That feels like electoral shock. It feels like sustained atheist because she's not just receiving the likes. She's receiving the intention beneath every single one. She distinguishes between genuine warmth and performative support. She senses when someone is looking at her image and projecting something entirely disconnected from who she is. She feels the comparison energy from other women. She picks up the fantasy construction from men who see her face and immediately build a narrative that has nothing to do with her actual self. She feels all of it, and she didn't consent to that. So she makes a choice, not strategically planned at first, just an internal resistance, a quiet discomfort that intensifies each time she considers posting something, a signal she can't ignore. And because empaths are neurologically wired to trust their own signals more than external pressure, She listens to that resistance. Over time, that quiet internal no becomes a clear boundary. That boundary becomes her way of moving through the world. But this goes deeper. The psychology here is intricate, and most people only see the surface layer. Something specific happen, highly sensitive woman becomes visible at scale online. It's not something most people experience in the same way, but it happens to her in particular. When she posts, she doesn't just receive feedback from the external world. She begins integrating the world's perception of her into her sense of self. She starts seeing herself through other people's eyes. And because her nervous system is exquisitely attuned to perception and energy, those external views can actually begin to replace her internal sense of who she is. This is called identity erosion. It's a documented psychological process that occurs themselves to sustained external perception without adequate internal anchoring. The opinions, the projections, comparisons, they don't slide off the surface like they might for someone with more psychological callousness. They seep in, they alter things. They create noise that drowns out her internal unclarity, and for someone this empathic, losing access to her own inner voice is more than uncomfortable. It's destabilizing. Her inner voice is her navigation system. It's how she reads safety, connection, and danger. It's how she survives in a world that's already overwhelming her nervous system. Lose that, and she's unmoored. It's not false humility. It's Vanda in reverse. It's self-preservation at the deepest level. It's protecting the most essential instrument she has, her own clear perception. Here's where it becomes truly interesting. She's not hiding present in the world. She's extraordinarily present in the world. She shows up. She engages. She's warm and fully accessible to people in her physical life. But she's drawn a stark line between presence and performance. She knows the difference between being truly seen by someone who's actually in the room with her and being looked at by strangers constructing a version of her from a filtered screen image. She doesn't want to be looked at. She wants to be known. And she's learned through direct experience, usually that being looked at and being known are almost always mutually exclusive. This distinction between being observed and being truly understood is the central psychological principle of how every empathic woman navigates the world. It shapes everything. Think about the relationships she actually values. She has no interest in people impressed by her appearance. She's not drawn to attention based on how she looks. She gravitates to depth. People who ask meaningful silence. People comfortable with meaningful silence. People who don't flinch when conversation becomes raw and honest. People who look past the surface because they're genuinely curious about what lives underneath. She's been in social, romantic, professional, where someone was attracted to her image, her role, the version of her that fit a certain aesthetic or function. And she knows exactly how that feels hollow, like standing in a crowded room while being completely alone. Because what they're attached to isn't her, it's a projection. And her nervous system registers this distinction immediately, always. So she creates an environment that naturally filters for depth. One of those filters, remove the visual bait that attracts surface level attention. If there's nothing to look at, then only people genuinely interested in how she thinks, what she says, how she makes people feel. Only those people remain. And those are exactly the people she wants. This isn't a strategy she engineered. It's an organic filtering system her psychology built to protect her. But the effect is sophisticated, regardless of whether she planned it. There's another dimension nobody discusses. The energetic cost that's invisible to most people. Every empath has a finitely bandwidth, a limited reserve of emotional and psychic energy before depletion. Unlike most people, she doesn't just spend this energy in obvious ways. She spends it absorbing, processing, feeling things that don't even belong to her, emotions she picked up from the environment, from a conversation, from what wasn't said. By the end of an ordinary day, she's already operating on fumes. This isn't weakness. It's the cost of referral sensitivity and perception, the same depth that makes her an extraordinary friend, partner, listener, and healer is the same depth that leaves her exhausted in ways most people don't comprehend. Now layer social media onto that reality. Add the constant stream of unsolicited opinions, reactions, comparisons. and invasive energy that comes with a public image. Add the psychological weight of knowing people are looking at you, forming opinions about you, generating thoughts about you in real time, continuously. The burden becomes unbearable for someone whose nervous system is already at maximum capacity, just existing in the world. She can't afford it. Not because she's fragile, but because she understands her own limits. And maintaining your limits while the entire culture screams at you to exceed them. That's one of the most underrated forms of psychological strength that exists. There's another beautiful and widely misunderstood aspect of her psychology. She's deeply private not because she distrusts people broadly, but because she has an acute awareness of what it costs to be truly known by the wrong people. She's experienced what happens when she opens her inner world to someone who wasn't ready to receive that depth. When she was vulnerable and the other person mistook her openness, mishandled. When she trusted and that trust was mishandled. Those experiences don't shut her down. In her hands, discernment becomes almost like a superpower. She reads people rapidly, not arrogantly, not judgmentally, within minutes of meeting someone, but with clarity in she knows whether they operate at a depth that can hold her, whether they're genuinely present or performing, whether there's actual substance beneath the surface. Her photos, her face, her visual presence, these feel intimate to her in ways that are difficult to explain to someone not wired this way. They feel personal, sacred, almost, like giving someone a key to something protected, and she doesn't distribute keys to people who haven't earned them. So when she does allow herself to be truly seen by someone she trusts, that becomes one of the most profound experiences that person will ever have, because she doesn't offer access easily. She offers it carefully. And what you receive when she does isn't a performance. It's the unfiltered, completely present, entirely honest version of her. That kind of access is extraordinarily rare in a world where everyone is performing constantly. The people in her life who've experienced it understand exactly how remarkable it is. We need to address what culture does with women who operate this way, because it isn't always kind. Modern culture has constructed a narrative equals authenticity. Sharing equals authenticity. Broadcasting yourself is a virtue. And this narrative creates a specific bind. For women, post and you're confident. Don't post and something is wrong. The culture rarely leaves room for a third option. That she's simply prioritizing depth over reach, presence over forming over volume. She's probably heard the pressure. Someone has likely suggested she should be more visible online. Someone has probably made her feel, even briefly, like her choice needs explanation or justification. But here's what's fascinating. The empathetic woman who doesn't share her photos usually doesn't take the bait. She doesn't defend herself. She doesn't launch into a detailed explanation of her psychology and reasoning. She nods. She smiles. She redirects the conversation because she already knows something the other person doesn't. People who pressure you to be more visible are usually operating from their own fear of invisibility. She's seen that dynamic enough times to know she doesn't need to engage with it again. There's a question that surfaces frequently when discussing empaths and social media. Is avoiding online visibility actually healthy, or is it a defense mechanism that needs examination? The honest answer, internally, is nuanced. It depends entirely on the internal state from which the choice originates. Some women don't post because they're afraid of judgment, afraid of being seen and found insufficient, afraid of the attention itself. For those women, the avoidance is rooted in fear. And fear-based choices, even when they resemble wisdom from the outside, typically keep people constrained over time. But the empathic woman who's done her internal work, who's examined her patterns, her reactions, her own wiring, she's not operating from fear. She's operating from clarity. The distinction is internal. The difference is whether the choice feels like escape or like alignment. The woman at peace with her choice is moving towards something, toward depth, a way of existing that honors her nature. She's not hiding. She's being intentional. She's not afraid. She's clear. From the outside up, these can look identical. Internally, they're everything. If she's the woman you're thinking of right now, the one who shows up completely for people, who listens in a way that makes you feel seen, who understands things about you that you never articulated, but who keeps herself off the internet. I want to offer you a different what's sacred. She's not protecting what's sacred. She's not hiding from the world. She's refusing to be consumed by it. She's not insecure about her appearance. She's secure enough in who she is that she doesn't need the world's validation. And that level of certainty in a culture that runs entirely on external validation. That's one of the rarest things you'll ever encounter. There's something important about her relationship with her own image that most people completely overlook. She's not disconnected from her body or her appearance. She's not trying to erase her physical presence. In fact, many deeply sensitive women have a complex and deeply rich relationship with their own image, precisely because they're so attuned to energy and perception. She knows that her image carries information. She understands that how she appears communicates things before she speaks a word. And she's acutely aware of the gap between who she looks and she actually is. She's probably had the experience of people being startled by her in person. Someone meets her and says, "You're completely different than I expected." She knows what they mean. They expected whatever they'd projected based on an image or a reputation. Then they met her, the projection dissolved, and what remained was more complicated, more interesting, more real. And she knows the real thing is always better than the projection. So she's not keeping her photos offline because she's ashamed of her appearance. She's doing it because she's protective of the experience of actually encountering her. She wants you to meet the real person first, not the story you'll inevitably construct about her, the performance authenticity to arrive first. The performance comes later, if at all. This is actually one of the most quietly radical positions a person can take in an age where everyone leads with the image and tries to assemble the actual person afterward, where the performance comes first and the reality comes second, if it comes at all. She's reversed that order entirely. And the result is that every real encounter with her carries it like to actually be in relationship more truth. What's it like to actually be in relationship with her or to be her close friend? She's one of the most fully present people you'll ever know. Not present in the way that gets performed, the constant check-ins, the status updates, the phone pings. Present in the way that when she's with you, she's completely with you. Her attention doesn't scatter. Her energy doesn't divide between the room and a screen. She's not composing captions in her head. She's just there entirely without she's with. And because she absorbs so much from the people she's with, being in her presence is unlike almost anything else. You feel it. Something shifts in the quality of the air. Conversations go deeper, faster. Silences become comfortable instead of awkward. You find yourself saying things you didn't plan to say, things she made space for just by being present. This is the gift of her wiring. And is the gift of her wiring. And it's inseparable from everything else about her. The sensitivity that makes social media overwhelming is the same sensitivity that makes her presence extraordinary. The depth that makes her protect her image carefully is the same depth that makes her love fiercely and completely when she lets someone in. You can't separate the parts of her that look like limitations from the parts that are unmistakably gifts. They're a final thread that ties everything. And here's the final thread that ties everything together. The empathic woman who keeps herself off the internet isn't just following personal preference or personal psychology. She's participating, whether she realizes it or not, in a quiet uprising against one of the most pervasive and damaging dynamics of our current moment. We exist in a time where visibility has been mistaken for value, where the number of people who've seen your face is treated as a measure of your worth, where performance has replaced presence and image has replaced identity. Most people are so deep inside that dynamic that they can't even recognize it as a dynamic anymore. They think it's just what life is now, but she isn't trapped in it. And by refusing to be trapped in it, she's demonstrating through the actual shape of her life that there's another way. You can be deeply connected without being publicly visible. You can have extraordinary impact on the people around you without broadcasting yourself to strangers. The quality of how you show up in a room matters infinitely more than the quantity of people who've seen your face on a screen. The most genuine presence doesn't require performance. The deepest knowing doesn't require display. The most real, most lasting connections happen in the space between people, not in the space between a person and their audience. She's living evidence of this. And maybe that's the most important thing to understand. Whether you're someone trying to understand a woman like this in your life, or whether you are a woman like this trying to understand yourself, the answer is the same. Her choice to remain visually private isn't every danger makes when you that deserves respect. Every piece of when you see the whole picture, the sensitivity, the depth, the need for genuine connection over performed connection, the filtering system that ensures only people who've actually earned access can reach her. She's not less than the women who post constantly, not poos who post constantly. She's not more either. She's different in a way that our current cultural language doesn't have words for yet. But the world is beginning to notice that silence has its own kind of power. That intentional invisibility can be one of the most visible things a person does. She knows who she is. She knows what she carries. She knows the difference between being seen and being known. And she's decided quietly, without needing permission, that she's only interested in the latter. In a world that's screaming to be noticed, that choice is one of the bravest things a human being can do.